According to local legend, the Wilhern family was cursed years ago when their son, Ralph, had a relationship with a lowly servant girl who became pregnant. When Ralph shared his intention to marry the servant, his family scoffed at the idea, deeming it foolish. Devastated by their rejection, Clara, the servant girl, tragically fell off a cliff. That very night, Clara's mother, the town witch, determined to seek revenge, appeared on the Wilhern lawn. She scattered animal guts and cast a spell, decreeing that the next Wilhern daughter would be born with the face of a pig. The curse would only be broken when a man of their social status fell in love with her and married her. Only then could the curse be lifted. As time passes, the descendants of the Wilhern family continue to have only male children and no females, until one day, an unusual occurrence takes place. A girl, Penelope, is born bearing the curse, with ears and a snout resembling that of a pig. Despite her unique appearance, she is still a part of the family. Penelope's parents feel deeply embarrassed by her face and decide to keep her hidden away inside their grand mansion to secure their position in society and avoid public shame by isolating her from the outside world. As she grows to be of age, they both believe that finding a suitable suitor for her and offering a substantial dowry might break the curse. However, any potential suitors can only speak to Penelope through a closed door, unable to see her face directly. The family remains hopeful that one day, someone will come along and see beyond Penelope's curse, accepting her for who she truly is. Penelope listens intently to the young man's voice as he showers her with praises and declares his unwavering love. Throughout her life, she has been reminded countless times about the curse and why her face frightens those who look at her. She knows that only genuine love and acceptance from a young man can break the curse, causing her to return to a normal human appearance. That's why she endures the constant stream of suitors who only profess love due to the allure of her father's promised dowry. But today, this particular young man assures her that her appearance doesn't matter, and he truly loves her for who she is. Filled with hope, Penelope decides to put his love to the test. Taking a deep breath, she opens the door, revealing her unique face to him. However, as soon as the young man sees her, fear overtakes him, and he flees as if he's seen a devil. Her mother, who has been watching the whole scene through a CCTV camera, and was hopeful until she sees the young man racing out, scolds Penelope for chasing the young man away by revealing her face so soon. Penelope is disheartened, but remains hopeful that one day, someone will genuinely love her and break the curse, allowing her to be accepted and loved for who she truly is. When Penelope was born, her mother, Jessica, was devastated by her pig-like appearance. She considered having a doctor reconstruct Penelope's nose, but the doctor warned against it, explaining that such surgery could endanger her life. Unable to bear the judgment of the public, Jessica decided to fake her daughter's passing and even staged a false cremation, while keeping Penelope confined indoors. As Penelope reaches 18, her mother begins preparing her to find a suitable husband. However, the process proves to be far more challenging than anticipated. The suitors who come to see Penelope are horrified by her appearance, and they often flee in terror. To keep their family secret hidden, Jessica resorts to extreme measures, restraining and gagging some of the suitors, and making them swear an oath of secrecy. Yet, things take an unexpected turn when the last suitor manages to escape without taking the oath. His name is Edward. Edward rushes to the police to report what he has discovered: a girl with a face resembling that of a pig. The police laugh at this confession, believing the young man is making it up. This revelation leaves Penelope and her mother in a precarious situation, unsure of how they will navigate the aftermath of this revelation and what it means for Penelope's future. Penelope's mother considers a quick escape to avoid the news spreading, but ultimately dismisses the idea when people think the suitor, Edward, is just delusional or hallucinating. Despite Edward's insistence that the Wilherns have a half-human child, no one believes him. The newspaper even labels him as experiencing manic episodes. Determined to clear his name and protect his job, Edward confronts the newspaper editor and requests a retraction. However, he is swiftly escorted out by security. Inside the publishing house, an investigative journalist named Lemon overhears the commotion and becomes intrigued by Edward's claims. He remembers an incident years ago when he coincidentally learned about Penelope's birth, but later heard of her supposed loss. Realizing that a picture of Penelope could elevate his reputation and bring him a fortune, Lemon approaches Edward, expressing his belief in the half-human child story. Together, they hatch a plan to send a man of high status, Max, to the Wilhern mansion as a suitor. Max, who is alleged to have squandered his parents' wealth through gambling, accepts the job with the promise of a significant financial reward. Their goal is to get Penelope to reveal her face to Max, so they can capture a photograph as evidence. The journey to break the family's curse and uncover the truth about Penelope's existence is about to take a new and daring turn. Penelope's mother and her diligent assistant embark on a mission to find her a suitable suitor for marriage. They approach an agency, promising a hefty dowry, attracting many young men to their residence. All the aspiring suitors happily sign an oath of secrecy. Meanwhile, Lemon prepares Max for the task of obtaining a picture of Penelope. He gives Max a suit with a hidden camera. Max's mission is to woo and agree to marry Penelope, then discreetly capture her face on camera. Arriving at Penelope's residence, Max sees a group of other hopeful suitors vying for her hand. As they wait anxiously, Penelope appears, and her appearance overwhelms the others, causing them to run away in fear, except for Max. Even after everyone else leaves, Max stays, waiting patiently. Penelope is surprised to see someone still waiting, and discreetly observes him from her room as he skillfully takes a rare book. Penelope can see him, but he remains unaware of her presence. He appears handsome and friendly, and they engage in a pleasant conversation about books at the library. He informs her that he must leave, but promises to return the next day. Excited at the prospect of him coming back, Penelope's mom feels hopeful. He might be the first suitor to keep his promise. Penelope eagerly awaits his return. Max leaves the residence and heads straight to Lemon, who waits in a vehicle far away, monitoring through a video lens. Max shares everything that transpired, and vows to go back the next day. Afterward, he heads to the casino for some gambling. The following day, Max visits Penelope's residence again. This time, he is enticed to inspect a frog statue in the cabinet. As he plays with the statue, he hears her voice through the microphone hidden in the room, and realizing that she is watching through the enclosure, he steps away. Curious, Penelope asks if he can play any musical instruments, and Max confidently responds affirmatively. Intrigued, Penelope invites a band over and instructs Max to try each instrument. He plays them with humorously terrible skill, making her burst into laughter at his goofy and carefree demeanor. Something about him appeals to her, and she feels a growing fondness for him. After the musical session concludes, Penelope invites him closer to the glass, allowing her to see him, while he remains unable to see her. They continue to chat and learn more about each other. Max playfully asks if she drinks beer, and invites her to the town's bar. Penelope, who has never experienced life outside her enclosed space, wonders how it would feel to be free, and considers the invitation. On second thought, Penelope realizes that it might not be a good idea to go out looking this way. Her mother is right for locking her away. She isn't fit to be seen by normal humans. She hasn't forgotten how different she looks. She wonders if this young man could be the answer to her prayers, the one who might break the curse and help her look normal again. Max is drawn to her soothing voice, feeling a mix of sadness and pity for her. He can't imagine what it's like to be locked up forever, and sympathizes with her situation. He senses that she must be a lovely person, despite her appearance. As they talk, Max opens up about how he would visit the park as a child, but stopped doing so. Penelope can sense the sadness in his eyes, understanding that he must have his own struggles. Outside Penelope's residence, a bit farther away, Lemon parks his car with Edward by his side. They both wonder why it's taking Max so long to obtain a photo of the half-human, half-pig creature. Soon enough, Max arrives, and Lemon questions the delay, urging him to get Penelope to reveal her face for the photograph. Edward complains about the delay, claiming that she showed her face to him the first day. He describes her as a monster, and the worst-looking creature he has ever seen. Hearing Penelope being described in such a cruel way infuriates Max, and he instinctively grabs Edward, ready to punch him, but Lemon intervenes, stopping the altercation. After losing the money he was paid to capture Penelope's picture in a gambling venture, Max realizes he must fulfill his task, even though he has grown fond of her. Determined, he arrives at her residence. Penelope asks him to play the piano, and as he does, she silently guides him on how to play, with a gentle hand on his shoulder. Max turns to look at her, and her appearance startles him momentarily, but he manages to stay composed and captures her photo. He has never seen anyone who looks like her before. Witnessing Max's initial fear, Penelope retreats back to her room. Her mother and her assistant, who have been watching the encounter, hurry after her. They encourage her to give Max another chance, as he is the first man who hasn't fled upon seeing her. They decide to approach Max and talk to him, but he has already left. As they rush outside, they spot Max and Lemon, whom Penelope's mother recognizes as an investigative journalist with a distinctive figure. He is a dwarf. Instantly, she realizes that Max must be a spy. Jessica and her assistant rush inside, screaming for Penelope to hide her face, because they suspect Max is working with the journalist. However, Max has already taken a picture of her, yet he can't bring himself to hand it over to Lemon. In a decisive move, he smashes the camera and runs into the house. Feeling exhausted from all the chaos, Penelope is done with hiding. She musters the courage to face Max, and insists that her disfigurement isn't her real face. She pleads with him to marry her, believing that it might break the curse. Max, however, reveals that it's possible that her appearance is permanent, and he is sorry, but he cannot marry her. With a heavy heart, he apologizes again and leaves. The constant rejection by men since she turned 18 has left Penelope heartbroken. Despite offering a double dowry, she is now 27 and hasn't found a man willing to marry her. Frustrated, she decides to take control of her life and face it independently, determined to no longer be defined by her appearance. Meanwhile, in the sitting room, her parents are arguing. Her father, taking responsibility for Penelope's facial deformity, blames himself, as he is a Wilhern. The tension escalates when Jessica lets out a sharp cry, realizing that Penelope has escaped from the house. The situation becomes even more complicated, and the future seems uncertain for Penelope, as she sets out on her own journey of self-discovery and acceptance. Penelope covers her nose with a scarf and her ears with her hair, attempting to disguise her deformity. As she steps out into the world, she is astonished by the bustling activity around her. All this time, she merely existed, confined to her room. The city is alive with fast cars and people rushing about in a hurry. Passing through the amusement park, she observes the joyous laughter and play of children, and she yearns for that kind of life. Determined to pursue a different path, she walks to a nearby payphone and dials her mother's number. Panic is evident in her mother's voice as she pleads for Penelope to come back home. However, Penelope assures her mother of her love before ending the call. Using her mother's credit card, she checks into a hotel for the night, gazing out of the window at the world she so desperately wants to be a part of. Meanwhile, Max, having gambled away all the money Lemon paid him, feels compelled to meet up with the sketch artist to give a description of Penelope's appearance, as Lemon has instructed. Overwhelmed by guilt, Max makes a tough decision to break free from Lemon's influence and leave his troubled past behind. He feels Penelope doesn't deserve the humiliation. Soon, the press releases a horrifying portrait of Penelope, depicting her with hairy skin, a pig-like face, and long fangs. The media offers a reward of $5,000 to anyone who can provide a real picture of her. Penelope's mom is horrified when she comes across the newspaper. She desperately needs to find her daughter and take her to a safe place, away from human ridicule, until the curse can be broken. Devastated by Penelope's sudden disappearance, Jessica and her husband decide to hire a private investigator to help search for their daughter. The investigator asks for a description of the missing girl, but Jessica is reluctant to provide the real one. Penelope's father, now desperate, picks up the newspaper and points to the portrait, clarifying that their daughter looks the same, except without the fangs. With determination, the private investigator traces Penelope to the hotel where she is staying. As soon as Penelope spots her parents, fear of going back to solitude consumes her, and she makes a daring escape by jumping out of the hotel window. As the chase continues, Jessica and her husband refuse to give up hope. They know that they must reach Penelope before someone else does, as the reward for her real picture could attract dangerous people. Penelope, alarmed by the newspaper's offer of a reward, realizes she must reveal her face to avoid potential danger from opportunistic people. It's only a matter of time before someone discovers her true identity. Meanwhile, Edward remains determined to prove his sanity, after being labeled a maniac for sharing his encounter with the pig-faced girl. To gather real-life evidence and help find Penelope, he teams up with Lemon to set up a hotline for people with information about her whereabouts. Having seen Penelope fleeing her home with their own eyes, they are certain she is still out there. One day, they receive an unexpected call from Penelope herself. She offers a picture of her face in exchange for the reward money. Lemon happily agrees to meet her at a designated venue for the exchange. Penelope goes to a self-service photography booth and takes several pictures of herself. She then meets Lemon at the agreed-upon location and hands over the pictures in exchange for the reward money. In a few days, her face is splashed across numerous newspapers with sensationalized headlines. Meanwhile, Max comes across Penelope's pictures in the newspapers. Though he didn't provide any pictures himself, he believes she doesn't deserve such exposure. Feeling guilty about accepting money from Lemon, he gathers whatever is left of the payment and rushes to Lemon's office to return it. Penelope, still concealing her face with a scarf, explores the city, relishing her newfound freedom. She recalls Max mentioning a bar, and curious, she decides to pay it a visit. Although she's socially awkward and not used to mingling, Penelope is determined to push herself out of her comfort zone. At the bar, the bartender serves her a glass of beer, and she requests a straw to drink through her scarf, carefully observing her surroundings. Soon, a friendly lady enters the bar and sits nearby. She strikes up a conversation with the bartender, sharing her experience with a persistent male admirer. Glancing over, the lady notices Penelope's scarf covering her nose, and asks if she had a bad nose job. Penelope nods in agreement. The two strike up a conversation, and the lady offers to take Penelope on a motorcycle ride around the city. Excited by the idea, Penelope agrees. As the day progresses, she goes to fetch something, unaware that her worried parents have been searching for her. Spotting her from a distance, her parents start chasing after her. Panicked, Penelope runs away until she reaches the bar, but she's completely out of breath. Exhausted, she faints upon arrival. Her new friend and other concerned bar patrons rush to her aid, removing the scarf to help her breathe better. To their astonishment, they discover that the girl they've been helping is the very same pig-like girl called Penelope, whose pictures have been circulating in the newspapers. Shocked by the revelation, they call an ambulance, who take her to a hospital. The news soon spreads across the city like a wildfire. Penelope wakes up to find her mother anxiously sitting by her side. Her memory is hazy. The last thing she recalls is collapsing at the local pub. Curious, she approaches the window and pulls back the curtain, only to be dazzled by a barrage of camera flashes outside. Dozens of photographers are vying for a shot of her. Guided by her mother, Penelope is ushered into a waiting car as the photographers and journalists follow closely, bombarding her with inane questions. The following morning, her face graces the front pages of various news outlets as the Wonder Girl. Surprisingly, the public's response is not one of fear but fascination, turning her into an overnight sensation. Everyone wants to know her story. In the midst of her newfound fame, Penelope spends time with her friends. Max, who has read about her growing popularity, seeks her out to apologize and confess his feelings for her. However, Penelope is cautious and unable to trust him, leading her to politely decline his proposal of friendship. Meanwhile, Edward's scornful opinions about Penelope tarnish his father's social status and business reputation. Fuming with rage, his father urges him to rectify the situation, knowing that Penelope is loved by the community. Determined to set things right, Edward approaches Jessica, expressing his desire to marry her daughter. Excited, Jessica rushes to inform Penelope of the news, but to her dismay, Penelope is less than thrilled about the idea. Jessica strives to persuade her daughter that this very moment is a rare opportunity to break the curse and overcome her deformity, urging Penelope to recognize that the people who surround her are not genuine friends but mere admirers who view her as a spectacle. Jessica likens their shallow attention to that of treating her like a talking pig. Penelope, initially hesitant, decides to give it some more thought. With a deep breath, she heads to the sitting room, where Edward has been waiting for her. As she enters, he drops down to one knee, a small box in his hand. He opens the box, revealing a ring, and asks for her hand in marriage. She accepts his proposal. The news of the pig-faced girl being engaged is the talk of the town. Lemon receives a tip-off that shatters his perception of Max, whom he believed to be a privileged individual. The truth is that Max is an imposter named Johnny, who stole the identity of the real Max, now languishing in jail. Johnny's deception weighs heavily on him, especially when he discovers the news of Penelope's engagement to Edward. Knowing that Edward holds disdain for Penelope and can't stand the sight of her, Johnny's unease intensifies. Driven by conflicting emotions, he decides to confront Edward, threatening to expose his true identity to the world. However, Edward remains defiant, challenging Johnny to do his worst. He boldly claims that he is Penelope's only chance at marriage, as no one else would ever consider her. Despite feeling nauseated at the thought of kissing Penelope, Edward still proceeds with the engagement, daring Johnny to reveal the truth to her, and see who ends up hurt in the end. Knowing how heartbroken Penelope would be if she learned the truth, Johnny wrestles with his conscience. In a moment of inner turmoil, he chooses not to expose Edward and jeopardize Penelope's happiness. It's Edward and Penelope's wedding day, and the atmosphere is filled with mixed emotions. Jessica and Franklin, Penelope's parents, are filled with excitement, eagerly anticipating the momentous occasion. On the other hand, Edward is plagued with sadness. He's only going through with the marriage to please his own parents and secure the hefty dowry promised to them. Penelope, too, feels a sense of reluctance, but she remains determined to proceed, driven by the hope of breaking the curse that has haunted her. Meanwhile, Johnny is deeply troubled by the impending marriage between Edward and Penelope. He yearns for a way to stop the wedding, and he holds onto the promise Lemon made, to expose the truth about Edward to Penelope's parents before the vows are exchanged. At this moment, Lemon arrives at Penelope's parents' apartment armed with concrete evidence concerning the true identities of Max and Edward. He divulges every detail of their plan, with Johnny, who impersonated Max's involvement, and Edward's central role in orchestrating the scheme. Jessica finds herself torn about what to do with this newfound knowledge, wavering between her desire to protect Penelope and her fear of disrupting the wedding. Ultimately, Jessica makes a difficult decision not to reveal the shocking revelation to Penelope. She fears that any disclosure might impede the wedding, and she desperately wants to see her daughter free from the curse that has plagued her life. As Penelope stands before the altar, the preacher recites the wedding vows, and she gazes at Edward, sensing his disdain for her appearance. Despite her imperfections, she refuses to force a man into marriage out of pity. However, to her surprise, Edward confidently responds with a resounding yes to all the vows, agreeing to marry her. As the preacher turns to Penelope, urging her to accept the vows, she looks around at the expectant faces, particularly her mother's, silently mouthing the response she should give. Realization dawns on Penelope. She's not here for herself, but for her mother's sake. In a brave moment of truth, she refuses the vows, lifts her wedding gown, and flees inside. Edward exhales a sigh of relief, relieved that he won't be marrying her after all. At home, Jessica frantically chases after Penelope, desperate to know what came over her, to disrupt this chance to break the curse. Penelope reassures her mother that she has finally embraced herself for who she truly is. While she may not resemble others, she has come to accept her uniqueness and love herself for it. In a remarkable turn of events, something magical happens when Penelope enters her room. As if in response to her self-acceptance, the curse begins to break. Her features gradually return to normal, proving that the key to breaking the curse was simply accepting and loving herself. Overwhelmed with joy and relief, Penelope realizes the power of self-acceptance, and the impact it can have on one's life. As Penelope, in spite of her physical appearance, calls off her wedding on the day of the ceremony, she becomes the talk of the town. Months later, and as time passes, the curiosity surrounding the pig-faced girl slowly fades away. She disappears from the public eye. Very few people know the pig-face curse has been lifted, and Penelope aspires to live a normal life. In a quest to turn her life around and explore her talents, Penelope leaves her parents' home and sets out to find her own path. She gets a job as a teacher, which she loves, imparting knowledge to young minds. One day, Penelope reminisces about Edward, the man she was supposed to marry. Despite the revelation by Lemon that she saw the evidence that Edward and Max plotted to get a picture of her for their selfish reasons, Penelope bears no ill will towards him. In fact, she's thankful he helped her in her journey of breaking the curse, so she decides to send him a letter of encouragement, knowing he's trapped too by his family's expectations of him. She also learns that Max was impersonated, and the true person behind Max's character is a man named Johnny, a gambler. However, she can't help but think of the good times they spent together, as Johnny was the first man that made her truly happy and truly seen. Penelope believes that Johnny was initially part of the deception, but later genuinely fell in love with her. Intrigued to meet Johnny, Penelope uses Halloween as an opportunity to disguise herself with a pig-faced mask and find his address. When she knocks on his door, he unknowingly lets her in. As they talk, Johnny opens up about his past love, not realizing that he is speaking to Penelope herself. Eventually, he recognizes her and immediately pulls her close, leading to a passionate kiss. In that moment, Penelope knows his feelings for her are genuine, and she feels the same. She had always known he's different and loves him too, in her own way.